Good afternoon. First off, we just wanted to welcome and thank everyone for attending Genscape's webinar today. We certainly appreciate your all's time. My name is Susan Frocht, and I'm with Genscape Sales Group. In order to get things started, I wanted to go ahead and introduce our speakers today for Surviving the Summer ERCOT 2012. First, we'll have Hudson Gilmer, who is over our Commercial Markets Group, and also Eric Palmer, a senior ERCOT analyst, both based out of our Boston office. Both Hudson and Eric will walk us through part of the report today. If there are questions, please feel free to submit them as we go, and we will address as many as we have time for after the presentation. We'll send a PDF to everyone registered for this event with our slides as well as contact information. Again, thanks for being here, and I'll pass this on over to Hudson.
Thank you, Susan, and thanks for everyone for joining today. What I'd like to do to get started is actually just share with you a slide that was presented at the keynote earlier, about a month ago, at the Gulf Coast Power Association conference by Mayo Shattuck, who's the CEO of then Constellation, now Exelon. He gave a great speech talking about Texas being really a role model, an example for the rest of the country in terms of how to run a power market, how to have clear market-friendly rules and transparency, vibrant retail market, etc. But then he made a comment about the peak summer periods and talked about how they had purchased, I guess, the retailer StarTex, and that no strategy could have helped someone in that position last summer with the cap pricing and the volatility. And he put up a slide a little bit like the one that you see here, which showed the 2 weeks of most intense heat and highest prices, the first week of which you saw real-time prices hitting the cap and being significantly higher than day-ahead. And then the second week, the inverse, where day-ahead was a significant premium to real-time. And that really kind of triggered us to say, hey, we think we could help folks in that situation. And we'd like to talk today in the webinar about really kind of a rigorous analysis of last summer and actually the second half of 2011, looking at various buying strategies, looking at a day-ahead market strategy, looking at a real-time buying strategy, and also looking at a third strategy that uses the Powerbuyer product that we recently introduced. So in terms of the agenda, what I'd like to do, particularly for those who may not be familiar with Genscape, is a quick introduction to who we are, and then really just jump into the analysis, looking at last summer, looking at kind of an 8-week period of the peak summer, as well as a broader 6-month period of 2011, and comparing a day-ahead buying strategy, a real-time strategy, and also the Powerbuyer strategy. And then what I'd like to do is introduce my colleague Eric Palmer, who's a senior analyst on our ERCOT analyst team, to talk a little bit more about the methodology that his team uses for doing the daily analysis. We'll actually pull up one of the reports, walk through it, and talk about what's behind it as well. So again, a quick couple slides on Genscape. Many of you may know us already. We were founded a little over 10 years ago, and the first product that we had is the product that probably most people in the power world still associate with Genscape, and that's the image you see at the bottom of this slide. It's the only service in the market that gives market participants real-time visibility into what's happening at large power plants across the country. So we have a patented monitor technology that measures the real-time flows on power lines and can show the output of really any large power plant. We've been serving the largest traders in the market. We're proud to call 25 of the top 25 largest traders customers of ours. And about 4 years ago, Genscape acquired a company called Envepower, who had been a longtime partner and provides fundamentals-based short-term market forecasts for all the ISO regions. Our Power IQ services, again, are used by large, primarily financial and IOU utility customers, and we cover not just ERCOT, but also PJM, MISO, NEPOOL, New York, CAISO, and WEC. But the service that we want to talk about today, the Powerbuyer service, is really new for Genscape in the sense that it's specifically designed not for the large financial trader, but really more for the physical participant, the retailer, the wind farm operator, the utility, like a muni or a co-op, or even an industrial or a cogen operator. Different needs, different level of detail, but also we think we can really make an impact. So switching gears a little bit, I want to talk about the various buying strategies and start with a somewhat simplistic table showing the two extremes, DAM and real-time buying strategies. So most of the retailers who we talk to employ, their default strategy is buying in the day-ahead market. That has obvious advantages from a risk standpoint because if they're hedging their positions, those hedges generally settle against the day-ahead market. And they're not exposed to the volatility of the real-time, the risk of $3,000 market caps. But there is a downside to buying in the day-ahead, and that is that certainly over the study period, over the second half of 2011, prices were about 10% higher in the day-ahead market than they were in the real-time. So conversely, a real-time strategy has the advantage of savings, of cheaper prices on average, but has the disadvantage of risk. But the other point to make about a real-time strategy is that many participants are limited in terms of their exposure to the real-time, either because of their risk policies or their credit sleeves. So going into a little more detail, what we've done is put together a histogram of hourly ERCOT prices. This excludes weekends and holidays, but hours 1 through 24. And what this graph is doing is showing the frequency of each $5 bucket of prices from 0 through $3,000. The red line is the real time, the blue line is day ahead. And what you can see are some important differences. While the general shape follows, you see that the day ahead is clustered on the edges. So day-ahead prices never dropped below $15 over the study period and never extended all the way to the cap prices, whereas real-time extended on both extremes. Obviously with the prospect of the system-wide offer cap going from 3,000 to 4,500 as of August 1st, if we do hit cap, that line will be extended, and the risk premium may be even greater for the real-time market. So in summary, from a statistical standpoint, what you see is that the average prices or the mean prices for real-time buying were $53.18 per megawatt hour. This was a simple average, not a demand-weighted average, as compared with a $59.21 average for the day-ahead market. But conversely, the volatility, as measured by standard deviation, was lower in the day-ahead market than it was in the real-time market, just under $200 versus $215. So to look then at how some customers think of their buying strategies, clearly the goal is to minimize cost, minimize your average cost of power. And one way to think of this, or to illustrate it, is using candlesticks. This is kind of a charting technology borrowed from equity markets, and plotting the prices on that candlestick of various buying strategies. So if we do that over the 6-month study period of the second half of 2011, on the top extreme is a somewhat artificial buying strategy which assumes that you pick the most expensive market for every hour over the period. So it's what we refer to as the optimal sell, or I don't know what you'd refer to, the suboptimal or the worst possible buying strategy. And this is, of course, done with perfect hindsight, so it's not realistic. On the other end of the spectrum is the optimal buy strategy. So this assumes you had a crystal ball which told you hour by hour, a day ahead, the correct cheapest market to buy, day ahead versus real time. And you can see that's a pretty wide spread, $72 versus $40.50. But again, neither of those are practical, are realistic. So more practical, more realistic are 100% DAM strategies and 100% real-time strategies. And then what we introduce is a third strategy which looks hour by hour using the Powerbuyer product to identify the optimal market based on price and upside risk of the real-time. And that Powerbuyer strategy can actually get your average price of power down to $51.50. May not seem like a big difference, but in the retail world, what we certainly hear is it's a game of mills. It's you know, fractions of pennies count. So when you're talking about this percentage, that really moves the needle. And the important point to make here is also that the savings versus a day-ahead strategy are 14.1% and 3.1% versus a real-time strategy, but the Powerbuyer buying strategy only calls for about 50% of hours to be placed into the real-time. So it's far less exposure to the real-time than clearly a 100% real-time strategy. We are getting a question coming in, and I'll just repeat what Susan said at the beginning. If you do have questions, we'll try to capture them either during the presentation or at the end. And the question is, this is all being presented from the perspective of someone who's a power buyer. What if I am a power seller? Can I use this product? The answer is yes. We have a number of customers using the product who operate wind farms, and their default strategy is to sell that generation into the real-time market. But essentially what they're doing is getting only $53.18 per megawatt hour that they're selling into the real-time market, and missing out on the potential premium of the day ahead. So this product, even though it's called Powerbuyer, is being used and can provide real benefit to a wind farm operator. The thing that needs to be remembered, of course, is that if a wind farm operator or a solar producer or even a cogen for that matter commits generation into the day-ahead market, but their forecast of wind generation is not accurate and what they forecast doesn't materialize in the real time, they need to buy back that power in the real time. And so they need a tool to also give them an assessment of the upside risk in real time, which the Powerbuyer does, and we'll get into detail on that. So I'd now like to just focus in a little more narrowly on the approximate 2 months of the summer in 2011, just to talk about how these various buying strategies fared. What you see is the same candlestick, but the numbers are all a lot higher. So the optimal sell, the worst possible buying strategy, would have had you at an average price of $163. If you had perfect foresight and could pick every hour, you would be down at $70. DAM only puts you at 126. A real-time strategy puts you at 108, and Powerbuyer resulted in an average price of 101.50. And just in terms of a summary table here, you see that during that 2-month summer peak, Powerbuyer would have saved almost 20% versus a day-ahead buying strategy, and almost 6% versus a real-time buying strategy. And this is particularly interesting. We look at what we define as real-time blowout hours, and real-time blowouts are hours where the real-time is $50 or more expensive than the day-ahead price. And even though only just less than 50% of hours would have been put into the real-time following a Powerbuyer strategy, you would have avoided 2/3 of the blowout hours. So now what I'd like to do is hand it over to Eric Palmer to go into a little bit of detail on the methodology that the ERCOT analyst team uses to run the models and produce the reports. They're starting their daily process at about 4:30 every day Central Time, and go through this rigorous recalibration and modeling process. And maybe, Eric, if you can just explain that in a bit more detail.
Yeah, absolutely. Thanks. So the model is basically a fundamentals-driven model. A little bit of background is there's over 1,800 transmission lines in the model, 1,100 bid blocks. And the way, we have all the units in ERCOT, all the bid blocks decoded for it. And basically what we input into it is our own demand forecast, our wind forecast, and basically the units, how we decide which units are running in the model is based on what Genscape does. We monitor the actual demand of the power plants. We monitor the flows on a number of lines. There's over 100 lines that Genscape monitors, and it's proprietary information. And we see the day-ahead commitments that ERCOT publishes, so we know that there are units committed in the day-ahead. So basically what we do is, the first thing we do when we come in is we recalibrate the model to what actually happened yesterday, because really there's no better starting point than what actually happened the day before to start modeling the BAL day and the next day. So what we do is, we basically model and match exactly what happened. We input actual demand, actual wind. We look at all the units that are monitored by Genscape, and we match the output based on the bid blocks and the actual prices that posted. And because we also monitor the flows on lines, we can tell units that we don't have visibility on. Say we monitor a number of lines in the Houston area, when the flows are higher there, we can actually tell that there are units online in Houston, so we know that some units there are running. So what we do is we match prices, power flows to the actual demand, wind, and generation that was running the day before, and we copy that over and we start modeling the BAL day. We input all the new variables. We change the unit availability, the fuel price. We input all the new transmission outages. We take a look at the capacity number that's available for the current day, and we make model changes on units, what we're seeing currently happening, what units are currently online, what the flows are really doing at that moment. And we input the new demand forecast for the BAL day, the new wind generation forecast number, and we model the BAL day, and we get our price for the BAL day. Then what we do from there is very similar. We just move it over to the next day, and because the best starting point is what happened the day before, it's basically that's our starting point for the next day, and we input all the new variables in the same exact process: transmission outages, availability, prices, and we model the next day real time. And the day-ahead market is very similar. ERCOT publishes all the dam energy sold, so we know what units are committed in the day-ahead. We know what the actual clear demand is, and we recalibrate our day-ahead model to what actually happened the current day, and then we bring that over make all the necessary changes with all the new inputs and variables, and then we model the next day. So that's basically, it's a very fundamentals-driven model based on what's actually happening, and that's pretty much how we come out to our numbers for val day and the next day for day ahead and real time.
Thanks, Eric. It's a pretty impressive process, and I'd encourage anyone, to if you're in the Boston area, you can stop by and actually see the team at work. Moving on, another important component of the methodology is the supply stack, and here Genscape's uniquely positioned to have visibility on the supply stack that really no one else has. Number one, we decode the historical bids of all units, and so we're able to see how they run, and it's not an economic model like a lot of other models out there, because certain generation owners have different bidding behavior, and we can see that over time. Of course, we also have visibility on the vast majority of large power plants across ERCOT through a combination of our infrared monitors and our EMF monitors. So we can see which ones ran, which ones didn't run, which ones ramped up, often down to the unit level. We also, the team is looking at prices both in the day ahead and the real time, and so they can see that combined with the power flow data to detect, even kind of down to the nodal level, whether a unit has bid into the day ahead or the real time. It's almost like solving a mystery. We've got various ways of resolving uncertainty in these models. And other tools that are really helpful to us are Genscape's capabilities in natural gas. We use nominations data, so we can see for gas units what they're nominating tomorrow, and that gives us a good indication of how much they're going to run or not run. And then we also have monitors on the large oil refineries in Texas, like Texas City, and some of those have significant cogeneration capability as well. So we can tell when they're running or not running. We can tell when they're generating and not taking load off the grid. So all that puts us in kind of a unique position to update that supply stack on a daily basis and make it as accurate as possible. And then another important piece of any kind of market forecast is the demand forecast. We are getting demand from a variety of leading weather providers, and actually, so we have a neural net that we've refined over the course of the last 8 years that is coming up with what we call our raw demand forecast, and then we have a team of meteorologists who are refining that based on their experience and their understanding of weather patterns. And so that combination gives us what we believe to be and can kind of quantify as the best-in-class performance of the demand forecast at the ISO level. If you look back to July 1st of 2011, Genscape's next-day demand forecast has outperformed ERCOT by 6.9%. So there's a lot of pieces that go into it. The model itself is essentially kind of recreating the dispatch model that ERCOT uses. It's a security constrained unit dispatch model with nearly 2,000 transmission lines, over 1,000 bid blocks, and over 600 generators. And we also have our own proprietary wind forecast, which is not just forecasting potential wind, which is easier to do just based on wind speeds and capacity of a farm, but also taking into account transmission limitations and forecasting the wind that's actually going to get to the market, get to the system. And we're also the team. Actually, it's the team who's looking day by day through all the transmission outages and coming up with congestion risks and price impacts. So what I'd like to do is now pull up today's report and and ask Eric to briefly walk through it so you can get a sense of how the information is laid out and
Yep, I'll start. I'll go through the report here. So basically, this is the first page of the Powerbuyer report. We have our 4 hubs, North, East, and South, and West, and our demand and our sub-tabs. The first one is demand and prices. This is what you'll first come to when you load up the report. And basically, what you have is basically just a quick and concise, basic, write-up about market drivers. What congestion we expect, demand, the buying strategy for the next day, and the risk level, the upside risk level for the next day. I'm going to scroll down here. So this is the North Hub. What we have here is our Genscape forecast plotted with the ERCOT forecast. You can see the changes for every hour, the differences rather. And then down below we have our day uncleared demand, which is roughly, it's been close to half of the real-time load. So on this graph, we have the Genscape next day forecast, the ERCOT next day forecast, basically these numbers up here plotted on the graph. And then we also have our Genscape Val day forecast, which is the green dotted line, which can just shows you, the changes day over day in load. To your right, the right graph is our day ahead and real-time pricing for the North Hub. And we also have the Val day dam solution posted so you can see the changes day over day. The green and red blocks on this is your DART spread. As you can see, we have a very high DART spread for tomorrow. Down below here, we have our day-ahead and real-time base cases. These are the numbers we're forecasting for the next day, and then our DART spread here. Moving down even further, we have a real-time upside risk level for the next day. And basically what this is after we're done modeling the next day, we run another scenario with 1,000 megawatts higher demand just to show that, if demand does come in higher than forecast, what your upside potential is in the real time. So basically, it's defined right down in the bottom left here. A low risk is less than 10% price to the upside on the real time. Medium is 10 to 20%. High is greater than 20%, and cap is greater than $700. You'll see that's we're very thin in the stack. And then here is our risk-adjusted market call, which takes into account the price of the dam, price of the real time, and the upside risk, and makes a decision whether or not you should either go day ahead or real time for buying. And as you see for tomorrow, we're primarily a real time strategy. Bottom right hand corner, wind forecast, ERCOT's wind forecast, both the STWPF and the WGRPP. For the Val day and the next day, just to show you, the changes in wind day over day, and as you can see, it's very similar. Everything else is pretty much self-explanatory on this page. We have our day-ahead and real-time pricing, where the market is for the next day, peak demand, how the wind is broken up throughout the day, where your risks are. As you can see, the wind is lowest in the middle of the day, obviously. Our gas prices that went into the model, and basically our on-peak heat rate for the day-ahead and the real-time based on our prices. The next tab, sub-tab rather, is the generation. We have our real-time supply stack. That's what's actually being dispatched in our model. And then our day-ahead supply stack, that's what we think, and the reason it looks a little different is because it's roughly half of the real-time load, and you don't have to, it's a voluntary market, so not every hour is going to be offered into. Scrolling down further, here's just a fuel mix of the peak hour and the change from the 10-day rolling average day over day. And below that is your 10-day rolling average at your peak hour. That's basically your fuel type at your peak hour, what's being dispatched there. Further down on the left here is it's a pretty good graph. It's your next day generation to load ratios. It's basically how much generation is online in each load zone versus the demand in that zone. So I'm just going to kind of go through the West here. As you can see, the West has a very high surplus of generation, obviously due to the wind out there for tomorrow. So this is a great way to just say, okay, in the morning, we're going to see some pretty bearish West prices during this time. As the wind drops down during the day, you have a significant chance of seeing upside congestion risk to the West hub and load zones for the following day. And then your other zones, you can kind of see how they change every day, with more generations coming back. To the right here, this is what we have in our model as being in outage for the next day. As you can see, it's about 7,000 megawatts of generation that we have in outage. Last week, this was over 10,000 megawatts. So a lot of generation has come back recently. So just another input to look at. And then you have we're big on transparency, showing whether we're right or wrong. We want to show you exactly what we've done. So this is the previous day, and what we've done is we've shown you what yesterday's report, the real-time base case and the DAM base case, what the actuals were, what the actual darts were. If you could do it perfectly, this would be the optimal market to buy. And did we send the correct signal? And then we just show you your savings versus the real time, your savings versus the day ahead, your savings versus where the over-the-counter market is trading.
So just to explain a little bit, these DART spreads are conditionally formatted. So obviously it doesn't make a whole lot of difference if we're right or wrong, and we've got a forecasted DART spread of a couple pennies. But if you're talking $30, $20, these are the hours that we really want to get right. And so one way to kind of eyeball this really quickly is, are the red cells aligned? And indeed they are, which is why you're seeing that for yesterday, had you followed the Powerbuyer buying strategy, you would have saved an average of $5.21 versus the day-ahead strategy during the on-peak period. Just going back to last Friday, that was obviously a crazy day. We had a little preview of the summer heat in ERCOT, and as Eric said, a much thinner supply stack. And in the Thursday report for Friday, the team correctly identified a real-time strategy for those afternoon peak hours, and it actually resulted in a $65 average savings versus a day ahead. So let me jump back into the slides here. So just to wrap up, I think the message that we want to leave everyone with is ERCOT is not an efficient market in the sense of the day ahead and the real time converging. There's significant spreads between the day ahead and the real time market, and any participant who's got a simple buying or selling strategy which is limited to only the day ahead of the real-time market is leaving a lot of money on the table. And this is why we developed Powerbuyer together with a number of retailers in ERCOT. We feel like the performance speaks for itself, and we've actually been very impressed, even just in recent weeks, in how the team and the product have performed. We'd certainly invite anyone who's interested to contact us. We'd be happy to set you up with a trial. The service itself includes the daily reports. We also cover all 4 ERCOT zones. And there is an XML feed for folks who want to have kind of more automated access to the data down to the hourly level. The one thing I will say is that summer is right around the corner, and we have a policy of not doing trials during the peak summer period starting June 15th. So there has been a lot of interest in this product, and if you would like to do a trial, I'd really encourage you to contact us as soon as possible so that we can line that up. And with that, let's see if there's any questions. We do have one question, which is, will the day ahead and the real-time prices converge? is the fact that they're wide simply a function of ERCOT being a new market? I'll take a first shot at that and ask Eric to add to it. I think our feeling is that, at least for the foreseeable future, the two markets are going to continue to move somewhat independently, and if anything, we actually think going into the summer that there may be less liquidity in the day-ahead market because some generators will be moving to the real-time to try to capture some of that upside, and the threat of the $4,500 cap prices may scare some conservative load providers away from the real-time market. I don't know if you want to add anything to that.
Yeah, and that's actually a phenomenon that we saw last summer during those peak hours. What we noticed was those days, clear demand actually went down at the peak hour, the peak pricing hour in the day-ahead market. And what that was because the market is voluntary. The generators that are running, if they're just going to run in the real-time market, they're not going to offer into the dam. They're going to, if the company has load, they're going to use their units to cover that load and not offer into the day-ahead market. And what that does is, on days where prices, high, basically peak load days, where the market is seeing it the high risk of scarcity pricing, you're going to see a very, very high dam clear because loads will still be bidding in for it, and generators are going to hold it for the real time. Those with generation are going to hold out for the scarcity cap pricing. So, going into the summer, you might actually see a bigger dart spread for some of those peak days.
We've got one other question, which is, how does Genscape's wind forecast compare in terms of accuracy with ERCOT's wind forecast? I don't know if we have the numbers on the top of our, I don't know, have them in front of me. I can say we actually use both. So for our dam forecast, we use ERCOT's, what is it, the SGRPP? Is that
the STWPF.
STWPF.
Yeah.
Because obviously that's how ERCOT is solving their dam model or their dam market. But we use what's called the Windcast IQ wind forecast, and I think because we have a good sense of the transmission limits, that tends to be more accurate in terms of not just the wind potential, but the actual wind that's going to hit the real-time market. Because if we understand correctly, ERCOT's wind forecast is more of a wind potential forecast than a wind actual forecast.
And they provide a wind range too. Obviously, that they provide two forecasts. One's a 50% confidence, one's an 80%. So, we're providing the actual, number we see is going to actually happen, whereas ERCOT provides a range.
Okay. So I think that answers all the questions that we've got. If you do have other questions, don't hesitate to contact us. You've got my contact as well as Susan's here on the last slide. We will be sending out a PDF of all of these slides to everyone who registered for this webinar, and do feel free to email us if you have any further questions. And again, if you're interested in a trial of the product, please contact us as soon as possible so we can get you up and running before the product.
Look for an email follow-up from Genscape with details on how to do the trial or other information.
Okay. Thanks, everyone, for your participation.